Hey, everybody. Today I'm here with Beth Broderick, and she's going to talk about how she's moved her own acting career forward. She's been in all kinds of different television shows and films. I'm very excited for you to join us. Can you give us a little bit of background on yourself? How did you get into acting in the first place, and what drew you to it?
Well, it was something I always wanted to do. I was the kid in class that was like, please call on me. I want to read this out loud. Like that, everybody else is hiding. And I was like, me. So there was always something attractive about it to me.
Mm-hmm.
And I graduated high school. I, I had just turned 16 when I graduated high school, and I went to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts.
Mm-hmm.
And I think to this day, I'm the youngest person to ever graduate from there. Like I graduated at 18.
Oh, wow.
Um, so it was something that I always knew I wanted to do. And then I moved to New York to pursue a career, and it was really hard. It was not going very well. I was out there trying to do plays, trying to get agents, trying to make it work, and it was just a very difficult. As your students and your attendees know, it's a really difficult thing to break through.
Mm-hmm.
And and then I started reading about this weird thing called that was happening all around us called gay men's cancer, which was the beginnings of the AIDS crisis.
Okay.
And I actually went down to volunteer to help and ended up quitting acting for several years and running an AIDS program, helping to run an AIDS program called Momentum in New York City, because it was just happening so fast. It went from 13 guys in a basement that needed some food and shelter, and then just hundreds, and then thousands, and epidemic, and then pandemic, and I was just standing there right in the middle of it. So I stayed, and then at some point, a bunch of kind of people in the industry got together and decided I should act again. It was somebody else's turn to do the social service delivery work that I was doing, and they kind of recruited me. I got recruited by an agent. I mean, it was all just a big plot, but thank God they plotted, and I I ended up getting this agent, and I got like the second job I went out on, and and then I just kept getting jobs. Um, so I became, like it was, but and then when I moved to LA, and that's another thing that people need to know. I got meetings with everyone. I went on generals. I met everybody there, and for a year, I had 100% callback record, but I didn't get the job. And my agents kept saying, "You have 100% callback. You've gotten 100% callbacks. You're going to get the job." It just took a while for them to get used to me, to figure I had red hair then and this voice, and I looked, like a little Colleen. And so they didn't really know where to put me. I wasn't a mom. I wasn't a this. I wasn't that. They couldn't figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
But eventually, I broke through. And the minute and that's what's important to know is, like, if you're unique, if you're somebody who's a little bit different, that's going to work in your favor, because it's all about being memorable. Like, I was the redhead with the low voice, could remember me, right? Like, I stuck out in a crowd. They didn't know what to do with me at first, but they knew who I was. I resonated with them. I was memorable. And that's really, really important. How you conduct yourself in the room, how prepared you are, and how professional you are, and how light-hearted you are about it. If you're too serious, you're just going to mess everybody up.
That's
And
true.
I haven't come from doing this incredibly hard work of working with people who were dying and in dire need of help. I just I wasn't afraid. You know what I mean? It didn't make me, I wasn't afraid of casting directors or audition rooms. It
Mm-hmm.
was, um, later on, I would become afraid of them. But when I first started, I wasn't.
Why did you become afraid of them later on?
Well, as your career goes by, and I had accrued series after series and movie after movie, and then you kind of don't want to be in those rooms anymore. You want them to just call you up and give you the movie. And so it becomes this weird thing of like, but I'm so experienced and I've been around for so long. Why are we doing this? And then you just have to fight past that and realize, the rules changed again. I mean, the rules have changed a lot in this industry since I've been in it.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you, like, how do you feel like the industry is different now? I mean, obviously, since the coronavirus, things are changing even more.
Oh yeah.
Like, what has been that sort of, evolution of the industry since you've been in it?
Um, well, when I first started doing movies, everybody was like, do not do television. If you do television, you won't get hired for movies ever again. So there was a big stigma about doing television. I had a really high-powered casting director corner me and say, if you don't stop doing television, I'm never going to be able to cast you again in a movie. And I was like, well, I'm trying to help my sister get through college, and like I'm gonna work, I'm gonna work, so don't put me in a movie. That's okay. I need to work.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of work for me in television. And now, of course, it's all a big mismatch. Everybody does everything, which I think is a good thing, except that a lot of the ways that I made a living in the tough times, like voiceovers and stuff like that, the top 1% are doing it all. So it's, huge stars are doing all those jobs that used to be kind of sustenance jobs for people that were, middle tier or breaking in. And so that's made it a lot harder. And like with the rest of our society, all the money is concentrated at the top.
Yeah, I think there was an interview I remember reading that you were involved in where they were talking about that a lot, and how, the money is sort of like shifted. The A level, like super high end stars are getting like a lot of money, and then the lower level, like B level, and then lower, like the amount that they're getting is just like dropped a lot, and that means that there's like almost nothing for everybody else, right?
Correct. It's plummeted. I mean, when you used to do a movie, so the top two people on the call sheet, okay, they're getting the most. So let's say it's, Sean Penn, who's a good example because he's the only one that does not allow it. But so Sean Penn's getting 5 million, the other person's getting 3.5 million, and then they would sort of tier it down. So number 10 on the call sheet was still getting, whatever, 700,000 or, something. So it made sense given what the people at the top are paid. And now they're getting that money, and the number 10 on the call sheet is scale. And it's supposed to be grateful to be there, right? So, I mean, and Sean Penn doesn't allow that. He makes them tie everybody's salaries to his. He doesn't allow that. He's the only one, I think, that actually pays attention to that.
Yeah. Do you have any thought as to why the pay is shifted like that? I guess it's happened though in other industries too, because like, the CEOs will get like all this money, then the next level down will like not get nearly as much as they might have in the past.
Yeah, well, it's kind of a social trend that's been taking place, but it also really had to do with a concentrated effort to break the unions, basically, that's been going on forever and ever and ever. And it's very hard for the unions to protect. They only can protect the bottom, right? There is no union for the middle. There is. So the union cannot step in and say, you need to tie these salaries to the top or what. So there's no power there. And how people really got hurt was healthcare. So even if you're, say, a named person, but you haven't worked because for whatever reason, you didn't like the movies you'd been offered or whatever, And now all of a sudden you realize, oh, I have to make a certain amount of money, or I can't insure my kid that has, special needs or whatever. Like, so health insurance caused a lot of people to take jobs for a tenth of what they used to take them for, because they had to make that healthcare premium. They had to make that amount in order to have healthcare. Mm-hmm. So that's really a lot of the ways that they broke us, which is why, like, solving healthcare in this country will go a long way to restoring the middle class everywhere. It's very hard to negotiate for wages if you have a sick kid that you have to take care of, right? So you're not so people didn't. People accepted a lot less than what they were worth. I mean, I have a bad reputation in that way, because I'm always like, yeah, no, I want my quote. They're like, she's older, she can't get her quote. I'm like, no, I want my quote. Like, so I'm very tough about it. Mm-hmm. Because I think it's wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's wrong. And there is so much more work, and that's great. But Netflix and Amazon and all those guys, they're not paying much at all. Yeah. And so, even high caliber actors are just taking every job they can get to just try to manage what they used to make at a leisurely pace. So I think that the next generation is just going to have to begin to own their own material and mm-hmm. figure out ways to monetize it, because this happened too in the old studio system, and a lot of actors just got together and created their own studio and fought back and eventually restored some equity. So it's going to be up to the next generation to really figure out how to do that.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's definitely, I mean, there's a huge shift. I mean, even like if you think about photographers, myself as like a headshot photographer, and years ago, most headshot photographers would charge like $800 or $900 for photo shoots. Now there's so many people as well, and like it's just like a competition level, it keeps going up, and so now people are like, some people like paying like $50 for headshots, and like there's all these photographers struggling to make like just barely anything. It's definitely crazy.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, and well, Corona is just making everything in the arts is going to be hard. It just is. People are now rewriting their scripts to leave out any character over 50.
Oh, interesting. That's going to be challenging as well. I mean, well, we'll see where it goes.
Things that we're going to have to be coping with, but the same rules are going to apply. You still have to get an agent. You have to figure out a way, and I'll tell you, when I first started taking meetings or getting those initial auditions, I sent a thank you note to every casting director who saw me. I didn't bombard them with my picture and, I didn't do that. I sent a thank you note, proper thank you note.
Yeah.
For years, I sent thank you notes until that kind of shifted, and then they were sending me thank you notes.
That's awesome. Yeah,
send thank you notes until it's time for them to send you one. Would be some really good advice.
I like that. What are what are you currently doing, if anything, to continue getting acting work or keep your rate as high as possible? Like, you've reached a certain point in your career that a lot of actors, they're still new, a lot that are watching this, but some of them might be curious, like, okay, if I keep pushing and stuff, as I, meet more people and have more opportunities, does it just get easier? Or does it stay just as hard to get work? I mean, people might offer me jobs, but if they're barely willing to pay anything, how do I deal with that? So like, these days, what are you
Right.
doing in your acting career to continue?
Well, I would say like the my lucky charm is that I'm funny. Is that I look like this, but I do comedy. And there's just not that many people who live in that world
Mhm.
and are, funny,
Yeah.
can do balls out comedy. There's just not that many. So you shrink the pool, number one. Like in drama, and there's tons of people swimming in that pool. In
Hmm.
comedy, in my category of comedy, light comedian, you know, uh, there's just not that many people swimming there. So it's a lot easier to outpace them.
Yeah.
And it makes me, as my career has endured, in these later years, it's meant that I'm really appealing to Lifetime and Hallmark because their audience is familiar with me and they like that the tone that I'm able to achieve. Right? So if and other people might have other specialties that make them a go-to
Yeah.
actor, but it really helps to be somebody that I'm somebody they can be confident that they can go to, and I'm going to play Mrs. Claus and they're going to love it. You know what I mean? People are going to like it. And that's it's a confidence that I've installed in them over decades.
Hmm.
It's also I my agents have never gotten one call from me that I was having a problem on a set. You know, and sometimes I have had problems on sets, and it's been nasty. But I'm just the consummate professional.
Yeah.
Never late. Nobody ever waits for me. I'm kind to everyone. I don't, and that goes a long way too. Because now we shoot movies in 14 days, 15 days.
Hmm.
And a lot of people my age maybe struggle with remembering their lines, or they struggle with their egos, or they struggle with not feeling like they are what they used to be. And I'm 61 years old. I'm not what I used to be, and I'm comfortable with that. Because if I was what I used to be, that would be insane. Like you have to change. We all change.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of that too. It's, I'm super reliable. If you're making a movie in 14 days, I'm going to help you get there. Like there's people that will not help you get there. And that's a shame, but it's just true.
I love what you're talking about here. There's this concept that I recently recorded a YouTube like video on it. I call it like your X factor, right? So you've heard of brand, and like brand is sort of who you are as a person combined with like your type, meaning like how the industry sees you, what kind of characters you can play. And so the X factor is sort of a mixture of three different things. There's your brand, and then there's your professionalism and reliability, the things that you're talking about, being very talented, memorizing your lines, all of that stuff. And then you kind of tie that together, I say, with a third element, which is your specialty. And you're talking about comedy. Some people might like be really good at cooking or whatever it is. Like they might have a unique talent. And I think that it's, interesting because we're tying it back. We're saying like, okay, well, how do we stand out in a way that, allows us to keep our day rate high enough and keep on getting called in and stuff. And it does come back to like having these three different things that you're talking about, your brand, your specialty of, comedic or whatever, and then being super professional and everything. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's awesome.
Yeah, you have to be all three. And it doesn't have to be that you're funny. Maybe you're really good at playing cops. I've never played a cop. Nobody thinks I look like a cop. I can't imagine why, but they don't. I don't. I played a judge once, but I generally don't play cops. So there's a lot of people who can live in that world very believably and comfortably. And they can go from Miami Vice to CSI to, like, I mean, I've been a guest star on a lot of those shows, but I'm not a tentpole cop type.
Mm-hmm.
That's not something I do. It's not something anybody would ever see me as. It's not something I get all excited about attempting to prove I can do, because that's not what they want from me.
Yeah.
And you've got to kind of understand what people, and they don't need me to do that. There's a million people that can do that probably better than me, but they can't play Mrs. Claus. So that's where you have to know where you live and relax about it and believe in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of stuff that I can do, and I've been very, very, very lucky that I've been able to go from comedy to drama, from film to television, just constantly back and forth. But still, the one reason that I have a career, I do drama a lot, but the reason I have a career is that I'm funny. So, like, that's just that.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That's just how that works. Because you have to have something that's your commodity that people need,
Mm-hmm.
or be, just wildly, earth-shatteringly unique.
I wanted to just really quick check in with you. I don't remember whether we had decided if the interview would be 30 minutes or like 45 minutes. Do you have to be
45? So
they said about 45?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, awesome, perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to actually ask you, in terms of like everything that you've done to move your acting career forward over time, to get more work and everything. We talked a lot about sending those thank you notes and how important that is. Is there anything else that you want to kind of touch on? Like, if I had to recommend that actors these days do something specific, we've talked about a lot. I mean, professionalism and all that stuff, but also something that they can kind of almost in a sense systematize. Like every time I go on audition, I'm going to make sure to do this, or, once a month, I'm going to keep in touch with people this way. Do you have anything like that?
I wouldn't overdo it, because the goal is to have them come to you. The goal is to position yourself so that you are somebody they want. And, like during pilot seasons, I would make a deal for a pilot I didn't want to do because I wanted to force a deal for a pilot that I did want to do. And so, so you have to think very strategically, because you want them to want you. Mm-hmm. Right? So you can't be too needy about it. You can be thoughtful, and by which you send a thank you note, or you, I would also say get involved beyond acting. I had a girl come to me who's very successful now. We had done a movie together, and then she got back to LA, and her agents dropped her. She was 35 and hadn't made them any particular decent amount of money. Hadn't started on a series, hadn't done, like, by that time I'd made a lot of people a lot of money by the time I was 35. So she said, how do you endure? And I said, you have to get out of the mirror. Mm-hmm. You are so self-focused. You are so self-focused that you're missing the bigger picture of life around you. You need to get out and give back. Give to other people. Do something constructive. Do things that matter. This is all going to work out. You'll get another agent. Your manager will get you meetings, and you'll get another agent. That agency is notorious for being kind of cold and mean. People are cold and mean. That it happens. It has nothing to do with her. And she really did sort of turn her life around. She got involved and she started making her own short films, and she started having charity events, and she started feeling better about who she was, and the work just flowed.
Yeah, that's that's awesome. I mean, that's kind of a recurring theme with every successful actor who I've done an interview like this with. That's one of the things that helps the most, is giving back and you know, not being self-focused. And I completely agree with you, because when you do that, not only is it good for others, it's also good because it makes you feel better about yourself. You become less stressed, and that kind of filters out into other areas, including like your auditions and all of that stuff. So that's awesome.
Well, yeah, I mean, you don't want to be someone who's like, I have met people who just, I mean, they live in that mirror. They're like, do you think this one strand? I'm like, I don't think anybody gives a shit about that one strand. And I truly don't. Uh, but, people can get like they're on their lunch break, they're attaching electrodes to their stomachs because they don't want any belly fat. And they're like, don't be that person. Don't be that person, because it's, eat your lunch, enjoy your life, live it like you're like fully. Don't live it like it's going to start any minute now when you're perfect, because if you're trying to be perfect, believe me, I've been naked a ton of movies. If you are concerned about being perfect or how you're looking, you're going to look bad. You are, because your self-consciousness is going to put you're going to, you just got to give it up. The camera can see you.
It's like shooting headshots, like what you're saying. You see it at least like, a couple times a week with people when I'm shooting. The people who are the most like worried about these tiny little things are also the ones who take the longest to kind of actually get a picture that I'm happy with too, because there's so many, like, you can see their like worriedness in their face and stuff, and it's really hard to relax. And at the end of the day, people aren't looking at you because they care. I mean, this is like rude to say, it comes off really weird. People aren't looking at you because they want to see you. They're looking at you because they want to see what you can give them. And that's like an emotion or an experience or whatever, so people aren't looking at your imperfections. They're looking at the emotion that's coming out and like the story that's being told in the film and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of say, like, I worked with some actresses, and I'll just say, open your pores. Open your pores. The tension, the camera, you have to just let it in. It's going to see all your flaws. It's going to see everything else, but it can't see your beauty if you don't let it in.
Yeah.
And that's a really hard thing for some people to grasp. But I think the key thing is to remember that what you see, how you see the world, whether you go to museums or how you see the world and what you see and what because it's all, the best actors are the best observers, right? We're observers. Like if you've been to my house once and I met you 20 years ago, I know what you preferred to drink. I observed it. I will have it stocked when you come. And so if you're concerned always about how people are seeing you, then you're not looking out and seeing them, and that's going to inform what you can bring.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
So it's not how you're seen, but what you see. That's really the most important thing.
Yeah, it's awesome. Well, as we get ready to wrap up, I wanted to ask, like, would you be open to sharing any like current goals that you have for your acting, and any specific steps that you're planning on taking to move yourself towards those goals?
Well, I would say to you that if you're 61 years old and you've had a 30-some year career and you still have goals, you need a shrink, okay? Because that's not a thing. That's not a real thing at my age. It's just not.
Well, a goal could be anything, it doesn't have to be what the traditional version of goals is, but right, I feel like everybody sort of has something that they want to do, whether it's, I'm just curious, like, what do you see for yourself? Do you have any interest in producing a film or writing
No,
anything, or
no, no. I've done all that. I had a literary agent. I've done all that. It's a lot of work. Although I would recommend to your students and your peers that they do diversify their talents. I mean, I was in the Directors Guild. I did, but at the time that I was trying, there was really no women getting hired to direct. It was just such an uphill battle, and I just kept getting acting jobs, so I just let it go. And finally right now, women are getting hired to direct. It's taken this long.
yeah, that's crazy.
But I would say diversify, know how to produce, know how to direct, work on that, because a lot of your students are going to just have to introduce themselves however they can into the industry, because it's never been easy, but I think it's harder now,
Totally.
So I would say, yeah, diversify, but also just be involved in the world,
Yeah.
don't worry about perfecting those abs unless you get the movie where you have to be naked, then do it. You know what I mean? Like this, it's important to be fully alive whether or not you're working. And for me, I really enjoy doing the Hallmark and Lifetime stuff, and there's a lot of independent filmmakers that I work with. It's going to be tougher with the coronavirus that we're dealing with, because a lot of the indies just don't have the money to really put into place the protective measures that I would feel comfortable working within. So that's going to be, I mean, I suppose I had really felt like, because I did a movie for Lifetime and a movie for Hallmark, and they were both huge hits last year. So I really felt like, I'm going to do that again this year, because they were so successful. We had so much fun doing it. And now nobody knows if they're going to work at all.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I would think I will. I mean, I always do, but it's going to be, the parameters have changed for me. And like I said, a lot of people are writing any older characters out of their movies.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Because they just trying to lessen the liability.
That's definitely going to be an interesting, next year or so. I'm curious to see, the industry is probably going to shift a lot, as it always has, but this is going to be a much quicker shift. And
yeah, it's going to be fast for sure. But remember, like I did this convention in Liverpool with Melissa Joan Hart. We went, and I had so many young women come up to me and burst into tears at the sight of me, and I had 4 girls tell me that they became a scientist because of me. That, and I remember when I got Sabrina, and I said, I really want you to make her a scientist, because I don't want to model for girls that girls are either pretty or smart. I want to be the pretty one who's also smart.
Yeah.
And that was it had a huge impact on people. So, no matter how hard it is and how much you struggle, if you have a real point of view, and there's something in you that you really feel you have to give, you have to offer, that you just stay with it. Mm-hmm. Just don't give up. The automatic answer is no, and it's not personal. It's just no, and you just have to keep going until it's yes. Mm-hmm. Because it's a meaningful way to live your life, to bring people joy. It is. So it's worth it. It's just hard, but it's worth it if you can get there.
Awesome. Well, that's the perfect way to end this. I really appreciate you taking your time to speak to everybody.
My pleasure. I'm glad you're really trying to dig down and find ways to help people, because I know it's hard out there, and I think that's a service. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.